Hi, this is Ozzie Jurock from OzBuzz, and we are interviewing interesting people and talking about their exciting lives. And tonight we're really honored and thrilled to have with us John Weston, who was a member of parliament from 2008 to 2015 for the very interesting district of West Vancouver on Sunshine Coast. Welcome, John.
And you missed part of the name, Ozzie. It was West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country, the longest name in the House of Commons, like a poem.
Yeah. Well, the interesting also is that on one side in West Vancouver you have the very well-to-do, and on the other side the less well-to-do, and you had to be everything to everybody. I found it admirable because you went everywhere. You wanted to be with the people. You had your town hall meetings in a coffee shop, and you got there by bicycle and talking to the locals and doing your thing.
We started something called Ride the Riding. So the idea was get on a bike, show people that you could get around a large area on a bicycle as part of your normal day work. And it was fun, and it made me very accessible, and I ended up talking to people I never would have approached had I been in my business suit.
Yeah, no question. And I think and people like to talk to you. You know, they're a little bit worried, can I approach him or not? And you're certainly very approachable. Yeah. I talked to the mayor of Kimberley a few months ago, and he has every Thursday at City Hall, he has a brown bag lunch, and anybody can come in and then talk. And he says sometimes it's a little double-edged sword. Somebody has a hobby horse that they want to get to talk, but most of the time it really helps him also get re-elected, of course. Well, we had the privilege, I had the privilege to meet you in Taiwan, of all places, some time ago. And not only were you a very good lawyer in Taiwan, you speak English and French, but you also spoke Mandarin. My goodness gracious. I mean, you started your international relations studies at Harvard and law at Osgoode Hall. But to speak Mandarin, my goodness gracious.
Well, if you need to eat, you have to talk, right?
Yeah. Well, I was there working for Royal LePage at the time, and you of course, you are the founder of Pan Pacific Law Corporation and Access Law. I mean, when do you eat anyways? You seem to be really very busy.
It was usually on buses between work and classes. That was in Taiwan anyway.
Well, it was interesting in Taiwan. We came up with the idea to do a taping, right? And we ended up doing a tape, 14 ways to do business in Asia. And it's some time ago, but it still holds true that if you want to get to know the people, you got to be local, you got to understand where they live and what they do.
Well, I think what we both learned was that the expats who went to other parts of Asia were often motivated by natural things like money, and that wasn't out of the ordinary in Taiwan. But what really motivated people who went to Taiwan was a love of the culture and the language, right, and the cuisine and the people, and that was reciprocated. So I think we both had a great experience in Taiwan, made a lot of friends there, and to this very day I say that my wife, whom I met in Taiwan,
yeah,
she and I were very heavily influenced by the emphasis on relationship being the foundation for doing business or other important things in life.
No question. And I think quite often the expat live in some sort of an enclave, you know, where they never see the locals, and then they're surprised when the locals wonder what do they really stand for, believe in. You know, we were downtown. You know, I lived downtown. I wanted to be there, and I learned so many things. I mean, here I'm the president of a property management company, and everybody was still at work at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And until I said to my vice president, why are they still here? I said, well, you're here. As long as the president's here, we'll stay. Imagine doing that in Canada.
It took you way too long to figure that out.
Yeah, it was too long. And I finally had my driver then drive me around the block a few times until they all went home, because, of course, I was by myself. The point is, you know, you have a very interesting life, a wild life, and you always, wherever you went, you're making a difference. And that's in your nature. You know, I think when you went to Ottawa and you represented your area very well, and you had some really things that you wanted to accomplish. You created your National Health and Fitness Day bill because you looked at your fellow MPs and thought they live in a lifestyle that is sedentary, you know, and aeroplanes and so on.
It was astonishing when I got there, thinking that I was about to work on legislation or represent communities. Something happened, and it was that a well-known journalist, his last name was Cameron, he died playing pickup ice hockey, age 41. And then Prime Minister Stephen Harper looked at a bunch of us and said, beware, you live unhealthy lives. And it just seemed that that was wrong, that we were supposed to be leading the nation, and here we were as very poor role models. And so at the same time, I was representing the area where 70% of the 2010 Olympic and Paralympic game venues were to be situated. And famous athlete, female athlete of the 20th century, Olympic medalist Nancy Green-Rain, said, well, why don't we make the legacy of the games an impact on all Canadians, not just podium people who won medals. And I thought that was a great challenge for us. So at any rate, with that ringing in my ears, I invited fellow MPs to come running on a Tuesday and then swimming on a Thursday, just as role models.
Sure.
And it was said, you know, if you can teach an NDP member of Parliament to spin turn in the swimming pool, you know decorum in the House of Commons is going to be way better. And so good friendships were made around that. And it was one of the few things that happened that was nonpartisan in nature, where we really came together to get to know one another, to make one another healthier, but more importantly, to become role models for all Canadians.
Well, you also had something in common. A lot of you traveled. There was a lot of flight involved. You have almost like having two homes, right? So, and then you sit around in committees and whatnot. You're not that active.
And you eat irregularly, and your sleep patterns are disrupted, and it's hard for some people to impose on that a routine of good, healthy physical activity. But if you look at yourself as a role model, not just as somebody doing her job or his job, then it's important to reverse those trends.
Well, and that certainly has been your focus for a while. In fact, you just created sort of something brand new, you know, a new institute that has sort of a slogan that wants to make Canada the fittest nation on earth. Now that's quite an undertaking.
And you missed the deadline by 2030. So we decided, you know, if it's going to be important, and Ozzie, this is something you teach, that there needs to be a date.
Right, absolutely.
If you say you're going to do something for your own improvement or to help other people without a date, then it starts to wither away in people's minds.
Goal without a date is just a wish, you know.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And we looked at the very negative trends in Canada, of this wonderful country. You know, we have so much to celebrate here, but we have increasing rates of sedentary behavior. 90% of our kids get 6 hours or less of moderate physical activity every week.
The physical activity is in front of a screen, no?
That's the activity, you're right. And so we know that that kids are getting 2 hours or more of screen time activity. This is their discretionary time, not in classrooms. We know that a third of our kids are overweight or obese, which means that they have 14 times the likelihood of a cardiac event by age 50. We see cardiovascular disease and diabetes just increasing in their rates all the time. And along with those things, mental health issues. So it's especially prominent among our First Nations communities. So a real tragic situation in a country blessed with every opportunity to be healthy and fit. We have good education opportunities. We have wonderful recreational opportunities all over the country. Yeah. You know, there's the natural ones, there's our lakes, there's our rivers, there's our trails, there's our mountains, and then there's the recreational infrastructure, much of which is owned by local governments. So that's why Nancy Green-Rain and I set about getting a bill passed that you mentioned, the National Health and Fitness Day Act, which proclaims the first Saturday in June every year as National Health and Fitness Day. The idea is get the local governments to encourage people to come out in greater numbers to try new physical activity, bring a friend along, play badminton, try rugby, you know, do something different. Often the swimming pools are open in that first Saturday in June. So why not get all these cities going? And now we have over 400 cities that have proclaimed National Health and Fitness Day.
400, wow. Well, and it is so important that somebody takes leadership in it. There's nobody that disagrees with anything you say, but nothing will be done if you don't sort of get proactive about it. Years ago, I was president of Royal LePage, and we were looking for something how we as a company, we had 10,000 people, and we were represented in 300 different cities. How could we get involved locally? And we came up with the LePage Triathlon. And then we came up with getting actually women to run. This is now 30 years ago. But believe it or not, we had up for a 5-kilometer run, which was the first run for women of 5 kilometers that were allowing women over 50 to run. We had doctors at the end, at the goal line, because we expected them. And here came all these women galloping through, totally more fit than most of the men. It was a real eye-opener for us. And so we had groups right up to 70 plus and so on. And it gets exciting, particularly in the smaller towns. Everybody communicated, everybody wanted to be part of it. Everybody wore the shirt, I did it. And so we are naturally wanting to do better, and yet somehow life takes over and we don't start.
So what you're pointing to is that physical activity is social. If you are going for a walk or a run, it's way more fun to do it with a friend. So this morning, Donna said to me, well, I just want to go for a little run with the dog. You want to come? And I wasn't planning on it, but naturally I went with her, and a little conversation ensues, and we have that space, that healthy space where we're out in nature. Nature has a huge positive impact on people, and
sure.
Unfortunately, Canadians are increasingly deprived from their exposure to nature.
Why is that?
Well, more and more of us are spending time on screens.
Yeah.
Right? So we're sitting inside, we're doing things that would have been done through physical labor, but now labor-saving devices have eliminated those tasks. And again, we're spending less and less time in physical activity, less and less time outdoors. So what came about after I finished serving as an MP was a desire to take all of that activity that had gone before. We really set the table. We created a parliamentary fitness initiative. We changed the culture in Parliament Hill so that it was okay to be seen in a tracksuit.
Yeah.
We created National Health and Fitness Day. We have all these cities that have proclaimed it. But could we point to one Canadian who was healthier or fitter? And I had to say, well, not really. And so the work wasn't done. And meanwhile, we spend billions on what we call healthcare, but it's really sickness care.
Sure, it's too late.
It's too late. Absolutely. When you're dealing with people who are sick, we have to, and it's great that we can, but that's not healthcare.
Sure.
And what really surprised me, given how youthful and vigorous our Prime Minister is, Justin Trudeau, was that in his mandate letter to his health minister, there was lots of good things. There was dealing with the opioid crisis and improving surgery wait times and things like that. There was not one word about physical activity
right.
or health care. It was all sickness care. So
I think that's probably not just good for Canada. It's certainly the United States. Everywhere we are focused on the wrong thing. But isn't it a little confusing though too? I remember in my life at one point I'm supposed to not drink coffee, at another point I should drink decaffeinated coffee, and then I said, oh my God, that's the worse than the regular coffee, and then I shouldn't have butter, and I shouldn't. It seems to be continuously changing in terms of what we eat. Now what you're saying as part of your slogan is that the National Health and Fitness Institute will be world leading and evidence-based. Now what do you mean by that?
Well, let me take you to a moment in time just about 2 years ago when I was visiting a friend of mine, a mentor named Charlie Kirkwood, who owns a large piece of land in Pennsylvania. And at the time, he was entering into a partnership with the University of Pennsylvania to build some off-campus facilities for psychology. And the brilliant part of this was that he was taking an asset that he had, land, and partnering with the university to create something new, some value. And that's when it came to me. It seemed to me that for years and years and years I've been promoting national health and fitness and want to do that to the last day of my life. I just feel that it's important for the physical, the mental, and the spiritual health of Canadians. But also in my family was some land, and so I've for years been struggling with what would we do with that land for the good of our family, sure, but also for the community and the country. And in my belief system, we have a maker and we're here on earth for a purpose.
Right.
And so, to love your God and love your neighbor, you got to do something good with the assets that you've got. If you don't, then you're not doing the right thing. So what if we took a little piece of that land and then built a facility on it that would become a mecca to instruct the instructors, educate the educators, and coach the coaches. And thus was born the concept of National Health and Fitness Institute. So this is intended to be an actual facility somewhere in Canada. It may or may not end up on this land that my family owns, and we're anxious to try and make it happen. But it's got to happen somewhere. We've built a charitable foundation, so that means that we have an entity. If people want to donate to this thing, they get a tax receipt. We have a great board of people like Jack Taunton, the doctor who started the Vancouver Marathon, started the Vancouver Sun Run. He's one of the fathers of sports medicine in Canada, along with his former partner, Doug Clement. Many of your listeners will know these names. Many of them will have been treated by these guys. They're just legends. He ran over 60 marathons in his life.
Wow.
He's now I think he's 73. He's had half a dozen spinal surgeries. He still is out there walking with these sticks. He's like the Terminator. He's unstoppable. So he's on our board, and he is determined to get this thing built. And then we have on our board an Ottawa-based woman, Henrietta Southam, who's the daughter of the founder of the National Arts Centre. So she's seen a family build a national institution, and she knows how hard it is to do this. But we've got 4 great directors, 26 advisors, and a large and growing community of people who want to make Canada the fittest nation on earth by 2030. So Ozzie, we're going to do this, and I'm hoping that your listeners will get interested and will provide ideas, because we're not pretending we know the answer. We know that everybody agrees we need more physical activity, we need more exposure to nature, we need to reverse these trends of diabetes and cardiovascular disease and mental illness. But we don't have the answers. We just know that we need to create a center, a focus, a place where the research happens, where the people come together, and we're determined to make it happen.
Well, and I think certainly if anybody would be a great leader for that, it's going to be you and Donna. The two of you are on the same wavelengths, and you're a good example of what is needed. I think deep down, every single individual feels that they should be doing more. I certainly know. I swim every day. That's about my...
That's great.
Yeah, but I also like my food, and yes, I enjoy my beer. I've actually have been known as Mr. Beer and Sausage. Actually, I firmly believe that when I die, or before I die, beer will be declared a health food anyway. So, but I know you don't want to hear this.
Well,
but the point
I had
is,
a shandy before I came here.
Yeah, but all we know instinctively that you're right. The thing is, how do we get ourselves off the proverbial butt and into the outdoors and away from the machine? My son was telling me the other day that his iPhone tells him how many hours a day he's been on. He says, I'm surprised that yesterday I was on 6 hours. He says, I couldn't possibly have been 6 hours. And yet here we have the proof all around us that we are not doing the right thing. But I'm writing a motivational book, and in that book I made a point. It was finished actually, gave it to my editor, and when I got it back I realized it's really the same old. Everybody knows, everybody understands. I don't think there's any stupid people out there. You go to a motivational speaker, Tony Robbins, or a great teacher or preacher, and you know that you hear wisdom, and you take furious notes, and then 2 weeks later you open the trunk of your car and there are all your notes. What happened between understanding that I need to do something with my mind, and then time goes by, mortgage payments, kids, whatever it is. And so how do we get from understanding that I need to do something with my body to actually get myself out of the chair?
Well, the benefit of having a great bunch of people, as we do on this board, is that you get great insights. So one of our directors is Monica Jacko, who was at Ryerson University. She now travels the world teaching on entrepreneurship and youth leadership. And she coined the term active citizens, active citizenship. So to answer your question, it's not up to any individual, because no one person can change herself or himself in this horrible malaise of inactivity. I contend that it's active citizens, active citizenship. people going out in nature with somebody else. People saying, let's go for a walk, let's go for a hike, let's go for a ski together. You know, and then somebody who is suffering, let's say, from mental illness, somebody who's depressed, often just needs somebody else to grab them.
100%.
Get them out talking, exchanging ideas.
Sure. I mean, it's just, even if somebody says, let's, on Tuesdays at 8 o'clock I meet you and we go to the gym or something. I go, even if I don't feel like it, because I made that commitment to somebody else.
Absolutely, 100%. I was in a meeting of psychiatrists who gathered from all over the country. This was in the parliamentary dining room in Ottawa. And I sat at the back listening to their discussion of mental illness and the trends that are not going the right way. And rather self-consciously, near the end of the meeting, I put my hand in the back and I said, what do you think about physical activity as a response to mental illness?
Yeah.
Didn't you think I had invented something really new? There was this energy in the room and people were saying, oh yeah, I'm prescribing physical activity more and more. And when my patients get out walking together, then the darkness literally falls away. And, you know, well, it isn't genius. We know this to be true. And yet companies like Apple and Google and Facebook, which are so great at what they do, have conspired, unintentionally I would say, to keep us on our behinds.
Oh, and keep us really involved and hook us, you know, literally onto either the games or the machines or the email. But we do it into ourselves. Oh my goodness, I go into the elevator and some young woman will come out typing, and then I leave the elevator. There's two guys trying to get in typing. On the road, when everybody seems to be so married to the gadgets, it's amazing.
The president of Netflix made a disturbing confession. I'm sure he regrets his words. But he asked the rhetorical question, what do you think is my biggest competitor? And do you know what the answer was?
No.
Sleep.
They want to keep you awake.
They want to keep you awake because when you're sleeping, your eyeballs aren't on their product.
Well, it's, you know, I do the radio show with Michael Campbell, and Michael is really involved with Special Olympics.
Oh yeah.
And you know, so we have our annual golf tournaments, and he raises tons of money for this cause. And what I find interesting, we always, every year we have the child or the older person already, maybe 27 or 30. And so the idea, the funds are raised and they can participate in Olympics, in the Special Olympics. And so we always buy a child in addition to the fund. So that child, then that money you pays for that child to go to St. Catherine's or somewhere and compete. And then I get a card, you know, in the mail, and it says, you know, because of your support, I was able to run and I turned in 4th. And then, by the way, my best ever, right? And I feel great about that.
Wow.
You know, the thing is, but you know, to be able to run, and it doesn't matter whether it comes 7th or 8th, but you're able to run. These are normal activities, you know, all of this kind of stuff. And when I see what these parents really, how they enjoy that active child and how that child communicates rather than not doing something. And here we are already healthy, right? And we are not doing anything, we're not doing enough, right?
Well, I had a really great meeting with a businessman on the North Shore who's interested in supporting our institute. And I made the statement that the level of physical activity among young people has declined over time. And he said, well, John, I don't entirely agree with you. He said that if you take the number of hours by the aggregate population, that there's probably a similar number proportionate for population and all those adjustments. His point was that 20% of the kids are doing a tremendous amount of physical activity. They start really young and they get into club sports outside of the school and they become a professional athlete at age 12. The problem is that the other 80% aren't getting those opportunities, and furthermore they're intimidated by the specialists who are starting to focus on one sport at an early age in life. And so if you want to pick up hockey at age 13 or 14, you look around and you see all of these kids who are such great skaters and you don't dare. So his point is a really good one. I think part of our challenge through this institute is to get the non-gifted person, a person who isn't an athlete out doing physical activity, as part of their daily lives.
Sure.
That's really what we want to achieve.
And then how do we get through to them, though? How?
Well, and I mean, on a very practical level, we're starting with all the expectable things. So we have a website. The website name is an awkward acronym. It's the acronym for the English and the French language name. So it's nhfi-insap.ca. So that website has on it what we call a concept video. And that's been done by the architects A49 who are responsible for renovating Parliament buildings. So they're top tier architects with great concept, really attentive to environmentally friendly design. So there's that. Then we have these wonderful celebrity videos. I mentioned Jack Taunton, he's done one. You have Lynn Kanuka Williams, who was Canada's bronze medalist, who in a famous run against Zola Budd and Mary Decker won her bronze. She's done a video. Kieran Lum, who just won Canada's cross-country championships, university athlete, he's done a video. So these videos, Rick Hansen, a lot of your listeners will know the beloved Rick Hansen. Yeah. So that's another way we're communicating. Social media, people can follow us on the usual.
What about, are you thinking, and I know that you're saying your role, the role of all of us is to have ideas, right?
It is.
The funny thing is I love skiing. And then when my kids come at Christmas time to ski, that 3 weeks I'm the most active one before they come, because I don't want to be left behind, right? So I have a certain motivation that I may have, been sitting on the dock all summer and not been very active, but when it comes to skiing with the kids, I don't want to be left behind. So I sometimes think, you talk about all these super active, these great athletes, the achievers, but Joe Schmo, Ozzie here, I need something else. And maybe the program could be that if I ran X amount per day, or swam this many lengths, or whatever, I would get some sort of a level of, and then I can reach another level. I mean, I'm just blue skying, but the whole idea is I had motivation strictly personal because I wanted to not be left behind. Maybe there's some other way that on a motivational level can get me to do more.
But Ozzie, your instincts are, as usual, right on. I mean, in a book called Younger Next Year, the two authors, one's a doc and the other is his patient, they talk incessantly about the power of having a friend or a family member who draws you out. Yeah. You said it earlier in our conversation. If you say to somebody you're going to be at the track at 8 in the morning, even if you don't feel like it, you made the commitment.
Sure.
I remember I would fly in from Vancouver to Ottawa, get in on a Sunday night, and have to be on house duty in the House of Commons the next morning. And you have the 3-hour time change. But I would phone or text somebody before my flight to say, I'll see you at the swimming pool early in the morning. So I know that the next morning, it was hideously early by my time.
Yeah.
My body was rebelling, but I made this commitment.
Sure.
So I turn up at the pool, and then the rest of the day, sometimes it was hard, but at least I had embedded that physical activity, and it all came to making a commitment to a fellow human being.
Yes.
And I didn't want to let that person down.
Yeah. Well, it's like on a business sense. Years ago, our company, we hired a gentleman from South Africa by the name of Charleston Thomas, and he gave us 3 words. It was called commit, perform, measure. And the idea is you commit yourself to a course of action, you do the action, and then you measure the results in short intervals, so maybe weekly, maybe monthly. And he started with our CEO. He says, if you don't do it, then they won't do it. And we as managers in those days, I have to sit down with each one of my salespeople once a month. Well, believe it or not, we went from 700 salespeople to 7,000 salespeople in 10 years, because there was something about being committed. And when I make my speeches, I say, commit yourself to something. Don't be wishy-washy. Commit yourself to your family, to your community, to your company. Surprise your boss saying, I'm staying, I'm not leaving, I love it here, right? Be committed, because you'll feel better if you're committed. But that's what I mean. And then if I do the work, then measure the results. Do more of what works, do less of what doesn't. And so that's why I think you starting out brilliantly. You have an assortment of highly qualified people that people can look up to. And you have the wherewithal and the drive, and you and Donna are great role models to be out there and visible. And you've proven it over and over again when you were acting as an MP. So now we have to have some sort of a program and get it going. And one way to do that is to raise money. No?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we're trying to raise $2 million by the end of 2020. That will cover the design and the construction of phase 1. So phase 1 would be a paddling center and a network of trails. We anticipate the other phases later on. I mentioned amphitheater. We hope to have some sort of a facility that would house up to 300 people so that people can come from all over the country and stay for 7 days or more. There would be laboratories and playing fields and other things. But the key thing is to finish phase 1 and do it well. And I'm spending, this is, instead of running for office, this is my public service. And as Donna pointed out, we really care not just about Canadians being physically fitter. That's certainly the immediate goal. But we think the whole society needs to be fitter. That as a country, as a civilization, that we can't be performing well in school or in the workplace, in the community, if we're suffering from diabetes and cardiovascular disease, and we can't think clearly, and we have to take days off, and we're depressed, and those things all come back to the routines that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think that certainly the Institute then can do research on how, because what it needs to do research first, and this is only a layman's opinion, is they have to figure out how we get ourselves committed to do it, not just the people in the Institute. And maybe there is such a thing where step 1 is, I'm joining this new trend by 2030. I want to be one of those fit ones. So I commit for the first year I will do X. And for the second year I will do Y. Something where I personally commit to that is manageable and provable and measurable. And when I won't be blamed if I don't do it quite right, but where it's clear that I made that commitment.
Right. And that's the track that we're on. And we really believe that it's active citizenship, people encouraging one another to really get going.
Yeah.
And I think we can be the fittest nation on earth by 2030. Right now we're down there in the 20s according to participation.
Yeah.
And we're determined to have a baseline to measure things. We have on our board, for instance, Silke Cresswell, who is a world-renowned in brain research. She was a professor at UBC. She's helping us with our definitions and our baselines. We have several other academics on the board as well. And it looks like one of our first projects is going to be measuring the impact of exposure to nature on mental health and the economic dividends that pays for society. So that's a prof from Waterloo who wants to do that study under the aegis of our institute.
Well, I think your goal is to raise $2 million by the end of next year. You have your kickoff date is April 30th next year at Mahoney's Burrard Landing in Vancouver. What can people do in the meantime? They can go to your website.
They can go to the website, learn more about what we're doing, who's involved. They can donate through the website. They don't have to wait till April 30th. That's going to be sort of the culmination. We're calling that our celebration, our fundraiser celebration. So we hope to make some good headway on our fundraising goals by then. We're going to have a great event on April 30th with some celebrities in the sports and health world, people who will be entertaining and educational. And your listeners, I think, will really enjoy that event.
I know they will, and I also believe that you will achieve your goal. And the National Health and Fitness Institute slogan I like is shape, support, and activate the change. And I know with your leadership, yours and Donna's leadership, you will. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ozzie. That's great chatting.